Major support for Carolina Business Review provided by Grant Thornton. Operating in more than 100 countries, our tax, audit, and advisory professionals specialize in helping companies unlock their growth potential. Colonial Life, providing benefits to employees to help them protect their family, their finances, and their futures. High Point University, the premier life skills university, focused on preparing students for the world as it is going to be. And Sonoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services with more than 300 operations in 35 countries.
Now, with mostly the political uncertainty behind us, we can get back to the business at hand, and that might be COVID-19 and maybe even beyond. So, can we start to unpack where we are headed for the balance of this year and possibly in 2021? As we do each and every week and have done for 30 years, we will unpack the biggest issues here in the Carolinas. Thank you for watching and supporting the longest running and most widely watched program on business policy and public affairs. I'm Chris William, and we start right after this.
Gratefully acknowledging support by Martin Marietta, a leading provider of natural resource-based building materials, providing the foundation upon which our communities improve and grow. Blue Cross Blue Shield of South Carolina, an independent licensee of the Blue Cross and Blue Shield Association. Visit us at southcarolinablues.com. The Duke Endowment, a private foundation enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. Barings, a leading global asset management firm dedicated to meeting the evolving investment and capital needs of its clients. Learn more at barings.com. On this edition of Carolina Business Review, Michael Almond of Antaeus Consulting, LLC, Peter Brews from the Darla Moore School of Business at the University of South Carolina, and special guest Howard Coker, President and CEO of Sonoco.
Welcome again to our program. It seems everyone is fairly weary or certainly political fatigued from this political season. Welcome to Peter. Welcome to Michael. Good to see you both. Gentlemen, let me start with the obvious question. What one meaningful change can we expect from a new administration, at least in the White House? How is this going to play out? Michael, let's start with you.
Well, I think that we can look forward to a new administration. The Biden administration will have a much deeper and broader respect for international engagement and an appreciation for the value of partnerships, not only political, but certainly economic and business and trade. And we need to reestablish our relationships with our trading partners, our business partners, those folks who invest money in the United States and create jobs here. COVID has done a number on that in the last few months, of course, in terms of interest in investing in the United States, and we can talk about the economic development impact of that. But also, I think the policies of the existing administration have caused great concern among our trading partners and our business partners overseas, and we need to try to change that. The other thing is, I think that we will have a renewed emphasis on closing what I call this, well, a lot of people call the skills gap. Talent has become a primary driver of economic development, particularly vocational training and education at the community college level, workforce development. I think that we will see a renewed emphasis on that and the role of non-traditional four-year college education and training in the United States. I mean, for example, Jill Biden, Dr. Jill Biden, the wife of the president-elect, is a community college professor. And so I think we'll see a lot of renewed interest on that.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Peter, let me bring into this. And you grew up in South Africa, so you got a different global vision. Do you get the sense that a new administration, a Biden administration, will build on the Trump trade policies? And I'm thinking about the China back and forth. Will it build on it, or will it take it in a different direction?
No, I think I would go along the lines of where Michael started us, but with one footnote. President Trump shifted the whole frame of international negotiations. And I think he highlighted a couple of weaknesses, perhaps, in our approaching that particular issue. especially with regard to, what can be done now pragmatically to sort of make sure China stays in line. And I think what you're going to see is a much more inclusive international policy, just as Michael has said. But the boundaries have been shifted a bit, and I think that with allies, we can probably more collectively make sure that China does behave responsibly while it continues to engage and open up. I can only underscore what Michael said in one different way. We are 5% of the world economy from a population perspective. And growth in the American economy can not only be sustained by growth internally. And as international purchasing power goes up over the rest of this century, if we are not engaged in that, we are going to be behind in a very serious way, which means we do have to find our way in. We must hold China accountable for things. But in general, I think that the international trade regime is going to be much better managed than it was under the Trump administration for the reasons that Michael outlined.
Well, which is so important, Chris, because we need to recognize the opportunity that's in front of us here. COVID has wreaked havoc with global supply chains. They're broken, they're interrupted. I think we have a tremendous opportunity in the United States to expect more reshoring of strategic industries in the economic sector of advanced manufacturing in particular. I mean, we have to remember that the United States is, of course, the world's largest economy still. We rank number 2 in manufacturing behind China. But it was amazing to me to learn that the United States still manufactures more goods than Japan, Germany, the 4th biggest economy, Japan, the 3rd biggest economy, Germany, the 4th, and South Korea combined. So I think that we have a tremendous opportunity, particularly in the Carolinas, where we place such great emphasis on the advanced manufacturing sector. I think there's going to be reindustrialization on a massive scale, and I think we have an opportunity to benefit from that, because in the Carolinas, as you know, I've preached for years, Chris, we have everything we need here to compete and succeed in a truly borderless world global economy.
So, Peter, to pick up on that thought, is this a restart for manufacturing, for education, for a post-pandemic economy?
Well, I wouldn't call it a restart, particularly on the manufacturing side. I'm not in disagreement with how Michael has just framed it. I will just say that these sorts of changes take time and are more gradual than they are immediate. And I do think over the next 20 years or so, we are going to have more a regionalization and a nationalization of production, as opposed to the globalization that we saw for the last 50 years of the 20th century. And I think that trend is likely to continue. I think all that I would debate with Michael is, will it be massive? Will it be incremental? And I'm more on the incremental side. Where I do think the education side is going to be interesting is, I agree that there's going to be more emphasis on how we fund education. But what I'm also hoping is that there is more emphasis on what the outcomes of education are. I don't think it's a big statement to say that higher ed has not focused as much on the inputs and the outcomes of education as it needs to. And I think the issue of employability, the issue of skills for the 21st century, the issues that you have to bring to the table for advanced manufacturing, I'm not sure that we have done enough to prepare our students for that. I know in the community colleges in South Carolina and North Carolina, there has been a trend towards that. But I can tell you at the Moore School, we are preparing our students for the jobs that are coming. And I am graduating every undergraduate out of our business school, data proficient, analytically capable, and functionally based. Mm-hmm. And the reason why we do those 3 things is because analytics and data in finance is different from HR, is different from supply chain or operations, as we would talk about at Sunoco. And unless we equip our high value students with those sorts of skills, when the remanufacturing comes back and everything moves forwards, they will still be on the sidelines, unable to engage. Mm-hmm. You require a higher level of mathematical literacy. You have a higher level of, statistical, say, quantitative capability, but equally an ability to communicate, to write, to connect dots, and to think critically. And I'm not sure that the average higher ed institution is doing that to the degree that it should. That's the option, that's the, should we say, the opportunity we have in higher education, in my view.
So to take it to community colleges, and Michael, we have about a minute left, for a long time, technical college and community colleges have said, we're the inflection point. We're the bridge to figure out this skills gap thing. And I'm hearing that again. Why is now the moment in time for community and technical colleges, Mike?
Well, I think that increasingly business and industry, the economic development infrastructure, professional economic development infrastructure, and community colleges are recognizing that the future is a three-legged stool, and that all of these players and all of these participants need to do their part and come up with innovative solutions to this. One of these, for example, is right here in the Charlotte region, and that's something that Tony Zeiss started when he was the president of Central Piedmont Community College, called the Charlotte Regional Collaborative for a Global Workforce. And this was a groundswell coming up from the community colleges in both states. So now we have an organization that represents all 16 of the community colleges in 31 counties in North and South Carolina, serving over 4.5 million people. And the footprint of that ranges all the way from the Virginia state line to the Georgia border. And the commitment there is to provide the workforce development and training that is necessary on an industry-driven basis to prepare a workforce which is becoming the #1 driver of economic development success nationally.
Michael, that's going to be the last word. We're going to meet our guest in just a moment and expand this dialogue. And welcome back to our program. Before we start, it's important to disclose that Sunoco has been a not just loyal supporter, but a supporter of Carolina Business Review on public television for more than 20 years. And we want to make sure that is clear. And now welcoming to this program is the President and Chief Executive Officer of Sunoco, Hartsville-based Sunoco, is Howard Coker. Mr. President, Mr. CEO, welcome to the program, Howard.
Thank you, Chris. What an honor and a privilege to be here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And we're glad to have you. Howard, a very interesting time. Of course, a week ago, we had a national election in this country and certainly in the Carolinas. And the unknown is, what would a Biden administration trade policy look like? And for a company like Sunoco, that clearly is very dominant in the U.S. and globally, how does that translate to strategic changes for a global manufacturer?
Well, Chris, first off, no crystal ball here in terms of what the balance between our president, the Congress, Senate, and what's to come. You're right. We've got 300 operations, 36 different countries, and another little important point is we've been around for over 120 years. So we have lived through a lot of different changes throughout the course of the history of this company and this country. So, as we look at it, we're basically focused on markets. So if we're in China, we're basically selling in China, Brazil, Malaysia, South Africa, wherever. So not a lot of import export. What we really are focused on right now is investing in ourselves, building on our strengths. We've just announced in the last, 6 weeks or so, that we'll be spending almost $120 million here in the Carolinas to recapitalize our facilities. So it's less to us about what the global environment is like. It's more about how do we sustain our positions in the markets that we're serving today. No crystal ball here, but we see opportunity, and we'll plow through whatever challenges a change in government may put in place.
All right, let's open this up. Michael, question?
Well, Howard, your company goes back to 1899, and you've successfully navigated, I think, the challenges of globalization. You're one of globalization's winners. $5 billion in sales, more than 20,000 employees worldwide. How do you account for that? I mean, so many companies have simply been unable or unwilling to meet the challenge of globalization, where you have succeeded and thrived. To what do you attribute that success?
You know what? I'm from Hartsville, South Carolina. I'm born and raised in the Carolinas. I think a big part of it starts with the culture this company has. We've been very thoughtful in terms of our global expansion. So it starts with people, and it starts with having the right team in place, backed by the right culture, and frankly, having unique winning technologies to where you can comfortably go into Malaysia, for instance, and set up an operation and be the best in that market. You have a right to be in that particular market. But going back to my earlier comments, it's more than that. It's about not only having the technology, but having the culture and the depth in terms of your team and your leadership to transfer that technology and be successful on a global basis. You have to have a right to earn, and it's not just technology. It's about the team, it's the culture, the people.
Peter?
Howard, can I say congratulations on your ascension to CEO? I must say your timing was interesting in terms of what you inherited once you got into the position, but congratulations and thank you for the incredible support you've given our business school from your base in Hartsville. Can I switch the conversation just a little? What do you think is likely to be the most important permanent or long-lasting effects of this crisis for Sunoco?
Well, for Sunoco, you're talking about obviously the COVID crisis. There's some really nice opportunities. First off, it's not just Sunoco, it's society in general. It's going to change how we interact and interact on a global basis, whether it's COVID or whatever may come beyond COVID. For Sunoco specifically, we're part of the solution, if you will, for the vaccines coming in place with COVID. We have a division called our ThermoSafe division that manufactures cold chain shippers that guarantees the efficacy temperature-wise of biologics. So, for instance, in the United States, we ship about 100 million, 150 million flu vaccines and have for a long time annually. So as COVID comes into play, we are working with the major pharma companies today to specify out the appropriate shipping containers. And you're talking about, as I said, half the U.S. Flu vaccine season is 100+ million units. You're talking a billion, maybe 2x. So it bodes well for Sunoco going into the future from a business perspective. But the other longer term changes are obviously, we're relooking everything. We're doing a call right now on Teams. That's going to continue to grow. We're going to see differences in terms of SG&A expenditures and just how we do business. And it's happening on a rapid basis.
Let me unpack the comment that Peter just made to you, Howard, about the idea that you were named President and Chief Executive Officer in February of this year. And then, of course, March, my term, the wheels came off the wagon in the economy because of the public health care crisis. Take us back to that just for a minute. You'd spend a lot of time there, but so you've got a larger job, you've inherited quite an expansive enterprise, and then you're faced with this. What were the discussions like in the virtual Sunoco war room around scenario planning about something that clearly shut down revenue, growth? Brakes were put on across all industrial sectors. What were those early conversations like? It's easy to look back on it now, but what were they like at the moment?
Yeah, been with Sunoco for 35 years, and one thing that we have proven is that we can drive ourselves through any challenges that are put in front of us. So, the very first things we talked about, obviously, is how do we keep our employees safe? And we did set up a central task force led by the executive committee. How do we keep our employees safe? Number two, pretty diverse portfolio, and we can talk about that in a moment, but out of 300 locations, how many of those locations actually serve a particular sole supply to a particular market or a particular customer? So as we're putting our place on a plant level in terms of how do we keep our employees safe, we created what we call a tier 1 environment that it didn't matter whether you were in a hot zone or not. These plants, if they go down, we're shutting a market down or a customer down. So we ended up with somewhere around 50 to 55 plants that we heightened things up. then you get into more of the, the fundamentals of business, and that's was the first thing we do. Who knew what was going to happen at the end of March? Were we going to see a banking crisis, et cetera? So we hoarded cash, 1.2 billion in liquidity that we put in place. Fortunately, we're drawing that down fairly rapidly right now, but the unknown. Mm-hmm. And I guess my final comment here would be that the diversity of the company in terms of portfolio, that half our company is consumer related, and so we're supplying into the food industry, and we all know what happened with the stock ups and build ups. Now, so our consumer business was extremely strong, 120, 130% of normal type demand environments. On the other side of it, industrial, as you noted, was struggling 20, 30, 40% in the appliance sector and the automotive sectors. But that's the beauty of our company, that we were able to balance things out. And look, April, May was tough, but been able to fairly well drive through it, and we feel like we're coming out of it right now.
Yeah. Okay. Michael.
What about workforce, Howard? With all these operations all over the world, first question is, with your local operations in South Carolina, talent and the talent pipeline, workforce development, this is becoming of critical importance, particularly in economic development and recruitment of new industry. But what's been your experience locally? Can you find the workers that you need? And then maybe you could contrast that with systems that you deal with in foreign countries in terms of how they manage their talent pipeline and their workforce development.
And Michael, what I'd say is, particularly here in the Carolinas, I think it's across, particularly the United States, North America, the challenge of finding good, talented employees. It's interesting you mentioned it in the context of the Carolinas. We have a facility in Waynesville, North Carolina. Interestingly enough, makes the trays for lean cuisine, banquet type frozen meals. Very large facility. We just invested $3 million in outs last week in terms of capacity expansion. But the question is, are we going to be able to fill the jobs? So just extremely proud of what our HR team is doing in terms of Waynesville's not a big city, mm-hmm. But we are a big employer. How do we get our brand out there to make sure that people understand? So a lot of active marketing campaigns using social media and other avenues. From a managerial perspective, I'm going to look over at Peter and say thanks to the Darla Moore School, we've got a lot of programs in place throughout the company, but in the case of our relationship with USC, the Emerging Leaders Program, as we call it, where we actually send these young, high potential, right out of college, second, third year with the company to USC for a week, where they undergo extensive training and case study, real world case study type environments where they report out to senior Sunoco leadership. So it's a lot of things that we're doing. And, as it relates to the global side of things, we're kind of all in this thing together and doing very much the type of things that I described that we're doing here in the United States.
Peter.
Howard, could I just follow up on what you've just said, and thank you for your kind words about the Moore School. And we're doing our best to provide human capital that is good for you and good for us too. In my work in South Carolina, I've discovered as I've gone around the bigger companies in the area that their human capital demand is not only for university graduates. There's obviously a demand for technical college graduates, which Michael has covered and knows well. But I was also surprised to discover that there are good jobs for even high school graduates who can read, can write, can pitch up at 8 a.m. on Monday, turn off the cell phone, work until 5 o'clock, do it for 4 or 5 days, and be successful. And it surprised me that there was even a shortage of that degree of human capital at the sort of high school level in some of our communities in South Carolina. Have you noticed that too, or has it just been my experience?
And Howard, we have about a minute left, literally.
Yeah, we have noticed that, and frankly, Peter, we're actually engaging at that level. So we are actually going into the high schools now and starting to educate in terms of who we are. And it's not just Carolinas, and Alabama's an example where we actually have a program, after school program, where high school kids come in and we have meaningful work for them. So it's a real issue we're certainly working on.
Mm-hmm. Howard, thank you for taking time. And our hope for you is that your second year in the C-suite may be a little bit easier than your first year and could build on some of the lessons that you're learning, even though you've been at Sunoco for over 3 decades now. So our best wishes. Thank you for joining us, and best of luck to you.
Well, Chris, thank you, and appreciate the opportunity, and certainly do look forward to spending time with you guys again.
Yeah, thank you. Michael, nice to see you. Best of luck to you in the mountains. Peter, as always, best of luck down at the Darla Moore School, and thank you for your leadership in Columbia as well, across the state. Thank you all for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please, carolinabusinessreview.org. It's our website, but you can also watch past programs and make comments on current programs. Until next week, I am Chris William. We hope you're healthy and your business is good. Good night.
Major funding for Carolina Business Review provided by High Point University, Martin Marietta, Colonial Life, the Duke Endowment, Barings, Grant Thornton, Sonoco, Blue Cross Blue Shield of South Carolina, and by viewers like you. Thank you.